The following podcast is taken from a live broadcast on Inspire FM.
Assalamu alaikum everyone, welcome to the Arise to Success show, where we aim to highlight inspiring individuals and their journeys to success. I'm your host in this show, my name is Jihad. Today's show is going to be pre-recorded, so please do bear with us. We won't be able to take any calls today, but please do feel free to send your thoughts about the show on 07779 481822, or you can also comment on Facebook. Our guest today is Marwa El-Gaby, who is an educator, qualified and experienced maths teacher, Quran student and teacher, educational coach, and youth leader. Her experiences range from working in secondary schools, universities, as well as in voluntary and charity sectors. She's the owner of Studious Muslimah, where she aims to enable Muslim female learners to have more fulfilling learning experiences, achieve their educational goals, and have all-rounded, balanced lives. Studious Muslimah offers a range of educational services for secondary school-aged learners, college and university students, and beyond. Marwa, thank you very much for joining us today, and welcome to the Arise to Success show. How are you doing?
Thank you. Yeah, Alhamdulillah, I'm well. Alhamdulillah, thank you for having me on the show.
Great, alhamdulillah, honored to have you, alhamdulillah, here. So, Marwa, mashallah, just reading your bio, I'm just thinking, mashallah, you do so much. So, tell us more about the various roles that you take, and mashallah, how you as one person, mashallah, doing all of this.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Jazakallah khairan for that. So essentially, I'm an educator. So all of these things come under the umbrella of being an educator. As you mentioned, qualified maths teacher, but also working on a qualifications for of memorization, perfection of the recitation of the Quran, and teaching others at the same time. Voluntary sectors, university, schools, etc., is where I've worked. So it all comes under that umbrella term of being an educator. And with Studious Muslimah, it's trying to kind of have that as a personal brand, but also a massive project for female Muslim students. And I think that it's possible because it's possible to do all these different roles because of the flexibility of being, currently now being self-employed. So I kind of balance my own time, balance my own priorities and roles accordingly. I'm also part of a couple of research organizations for Muslims. So the Muslim Researchers Network, so I volunteer for them on the committee, and I also am part of a project, a research project, the Islamic Educator Learning Community, which is part of a research at the University of Cambridge by Dr. Farah Ahmed. So all these things kind of complement each other and come under that whole personal project of being the Studious Muslimah.
Inshallah. And that research, that's quite interesting to know. So what's the research about?
So the research network that I'm part of is an organization created for Muslim researchers from, undergraduate levels all the way up to kind of professors, and they organize conferences. It was founded in 2017 or 2018, I think, that academic year. And I joined the committee just last March. And but I've been attending their conferences and their things online as well. And it's all lots of branches. So they have like biology, medicine, they have engineering group, they have lots of different communities. And I'm part of the organizing the mentorship scheme and the community research communities. So allocating people, but also leading on the social sciences and education, which is my field of research.
That's quite interesting. Anybody can join those research if they want to.
The Muslim Researchers Network, is currently on voluntary basis, so people can apply on if they want to be mentors or mentees. They can attend the webinars and the conferences. We have something coming up actually on the 7th of October about artificial intelligence. And so that's one of the platforms that square with my values and square with what I'm trying to do. So I volunteer for them
No, that's great, because any of our dear listeners, inshallah, listening and they are interested to volunteer in research and on the roles that you've mentioned, then they can get in touch with them. So that's great. Jazakallah khair for that. Okay, brilliant, mashallah. And tell us more about Studious Muslimah, right? And what motivated you to start that?
Okay, so Studious Muslimah, essentially, I have three words. They're on the website, and it's about faith, confidence, and achievement. So you, in your introduction, you mentioned the aims that I have for Studious Muslimah. It's about experiences, the educational experiences, but also the outcomes and the goals, and to have an all-rounded, balanced lives. And it's a platform that is still growing. I coined the term mid-October last year, 2022. So it's kind of, you might think it's brand new, but the motivations behind it are essentially from my own educational journey, my own educational path from secondary school onwards, university years, and even, as an educator and the different experiences and roles that I've worked in. That last role, that last employment role that I had at the University of Oxford, actually towards the end of it, as it was nearing an end, I was selected to participate in the Young Muslim Leadership Program at Oxford Centre for Islamic Studies. And it's where a lot of ideas of what I had to contribute and what my next role was going to be. So as the role of working at University of Oxford came to an end, it nicely came with that motivation and that finding a sense of purpose and aligning a lot of my values, a lot of what I can offer in the field of education and to the world at large, really. And I decided to bring my background, my education background and my experiences, and bring that, and to help the future Muslims in their careers and starting with their education paths.
That's amazing. And when you said that you were working with young people, what were you doing with the young people then?
So which role exactly?
When you were working in did you say University of Oxford or something like that, before you the transition into Studious Muslimah?
So I was working at University of Oxford. I was working as a research assistant. It was the Department of Experimental Psychology, and I was working with research done in primary schools. It was actually research to combat bullying in primary schools, and it was a massive trial across UK schools. But I think what I was saying is that it was squaring with the Young Muslim Leadership Program. That was a leadership program for us, as in us being the young, the youth. So 16 to 30-year-olds. Sorry, not 16. 25 to 30-year-olds, sorry, were on the program. So we were kind of the youth training to be leaders as Muslims in the Oxford Centre for Islamic Studies. So that happened towards the end of my employment. So
No, that's great. It's good, mashallah, to see initiatives like this. So that's amazing. Right, so you mentioned also your educational journey, and Studious Muslim was built a lot based on your educational journey, and that kind of, had a big impact on Studious Muslimah. So could you tell us a bit more about that educational journey that has led to Studious Muslimah?
Okay, so my education journey, I don't know where you want me to start, really. But if I'm talking about the cohort of Studious Muslimah, I'm saying from secondary school onwards up to early university years, then I think it's important to reflect on my own journey. Question. So from secondary school, so from around GCSE time, alhamdulillah, I was high achieving and A levels, getting good grades and naturally looking like, someone who's doing well for herself and intelligent. But actually behind the scenes, there was a lot of difficulties and a lot of obstacles in terms of kind of character development, health issues, and things that impacted my confidence and were creating knockdown effects later on down the line as well. And then in my early university years, I was quite reserved. I was quite quiet and trying to come out my shell, but also trying to kind of recover from health difficulties. I, alhamdulillah, by the grace of Allah, overcame health issues, and I was like I'm saying, coming out my shell. I volunteered to participate with the Islamic Society.
Mm.
At my university, my final year, I was on the committee. And then after graduation, there was still some troublesome times for me, and decisions on careers. Some might call it a kind of quarter life crisis. Some people like to call it. A lot of people have gone through that, maybe going through it right now. And but Alhamdulillah, again, Allah found a way for me. That's when I began to train properly to be an educator. So I started educating from when I was in university, tutoring maths, etc. But then formally doing a postgraduate diploma in education and training to be a maths teacher. It wasn't a straight path again towards the newly qualified teacher induction. I had to take a break. I didn't complete it in 1 year, and subhanallah, it was kind of a stress related health difficulty, and again back on track. Allah found the way for me, and I the CV that you might see now is in the postgraduate degrees that I've achieved after that, and become a teacher and worked at different universities and whatnot. And then Studious Muslimah came about. So I'm trying to paint a realistic picture of what it was like. It wasn't, if you look at my CV, you can't tell that I struggled with things behind the scenes and things that maybe a lot of young females are going through now, or even young males as well, with health or confidence levels or sense of belonging. Sometimes there's also things that you could call them as discrimination as well in different settings. So there's a whole host of things that I feel are really important to address by creating platforms like Studious Muslimah to then create that and cultivate the confidence, cultivate the faith-based learning, the purpose in life, the helping them with their experiences and what they're going through. I think that's really vital.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm just going to quickly remind the listeners that we have Marwa El-Gaby with us on the show today, who's an educator, qualified and experienced maths teacher, Quran student and teacher, educational coach and youth leader as well, mashallah. So, Marwa, in terms of the struggles that you've gone through, perhaps you can tell us a bit more about how you've overcome them so that our dear listeners who are experiencing something similar, for instance, can learn from that and get inspired, inshallah, because mashallah, that led to, you setting up Studious Muslim and helping other female Muslims as well. So if you're okay with that, if you can tell us what has helped you and how you've managed to overcome those challenges that you've experienced.
So as I am repeating, it's the grace of Allah, and I can't. Sometimes it's hard to pinpoint. You can certainly say it's all from Allah, and I need to be more specific that obviously the support that you get from others, especially parents, especially people that loved ones, and people that are in the Muslim local community. So it comes down to dua and faith. And I'm not saying here that it's just from me. No, obviously the dua of others, and especially the parents and their support that they have provided in so many ways along those years is vital. Also, the educators, some of the role models that I've looked up to and how they were sincere in what they have done, Muslims and non-Muslims as well. So I went to mainstream schools in secondary school, and there were teachers that I really looked up to, and they were supportive, and they understood what I was going through as a teenager. And subhanAllah, I'm really grateful for so many people that have helped along the way, because it takes a village. It really does. And I can't sit here and say that, I overcame these things. It was overcome as a collective effort, all by the grace of Allah. I don't know if I'm answering your question or.
No, mashallah, you are. But that support system that you mentioned is quite important as well, because that's something I've noticed when I work with the young people. I see a huge difference between those who have a support system at home, specifically from the family, and those with no support system at all or no family support system. And it also reflects on their coping mechanisms, how they look at life and how they deal with life matters as well. So, for instance, those I've noticed those who have a good support system, specifically family support system, their coping strategies are a lot healthier. Their thinking is a lot more positive, and they manage life really well as well. So that support system that you mentioned is something really, really important, and I'm certainly noticing that with any kind of children or all over Muslims, non-Muslims, that support system specifically from the family is very, very important. And as Muslims, there is a lot of importance in that in the religion as well. So could you tell us a bit more about that support system? And you've mentioned it briefly in terms of the level of the support system that you've received. Could you tell us more details, and so that our dear listeners as well can benefit from that and see the importance of that in helping the younger people?
Sure. I'm going to touch upon a point you mentioned, how important family is, because it's kind of a caveat, but it's also an important point to note that there are people that grow up without so much parental support, and they still manage, subhanAllah, to beat the odds and to thrive in their futures and their successes. So I think sometimes we can't blame parents that maybe haven't come to a level where they're very, very, very supportive, as I've been blessed with, alhamdulillah, and others are blessed with. So that's important to note, that sometimes it's the local communities that people are in. So that's something that parents can create themselves by putting people in the right communities. But sometimes it happens by the grace of life if the parents aren't supportive. So as long as there's that higher sense of purpose and the priority of having a faith-based approach to a lot of things, and having that akhirah in mind, the afterlife, and to know that this is the sole purpose. The sole purpose is to worship, and that you're the only one who's going to be accountable for your actions at the end of the day, at the end of life. I think that nurturing that is going to create the support system. So for parents, though, if they are willing and to listen and to support, I think there's quite a few things that they can put in place. So encouragement and providing autonomy, a certain level of autonomy, obviously within the parameters of our deen and our teachings. Also being role models. I think that's really important. Being mirroring what you want to see, and that can be in so many different ways, because character development at the end of the day isn't going to come by you telling your children what to do. It's going to come from what they see you do and what you value and what priorities you put in place. So for instance, a parent can hone down and try to say, education is so important, but they themselves might not be paying attention to any of the learning that's required for them, even in their career, or even if, as stay-at-home moms or anything. If they're not modeling that, actually you need to be nurturing yourself and showing, so that the character development is mirrored by the child, and to have others that you listen to, so mentors and coaches and people that you look up to as a parent, to have that, so that the students and the children are seeing that there's always going to be room for improvement, always room for learning, even for the parents themselves. So the children will automatically do that themselves, and they're more in need of it. But the parents, there's still room for improvement and development always. And I mentioned the local communities, and because sometimes people are blessed with having extended family, and that kind of nurturing environment for children is really important. But for example, I didn't have extended family in the UK when I grew up, but then I had the support of the local communities, which my parents were putting us in these places of, Islamic communities, the local mosque, or even not faith-based things, but local things, to help us build our sense of identity and belonging.
No, that's great, mashallah. And I just wanted to clarify here as well in terms of what I meant by the support system. I mean, some families, and it happens where the parents are not together. For instance, that's not what I meant in terms of the support system, because that's when after I said it, I remembered when I was saying it once to somebody, and she was like, "Well, that's not always possible because I was divorced, and I couldn't support my children in that sense." So I wanted to clarify that's not what I meant by the support system, because sometimes that happens where the parents are not together. But what I meant in terms of the support system, similar to what you've just mentioned, Marwa, is being a role model, listening to them, having that conversations with them Islamically. We taught that when the children reach this certain level, we become more friends to them, so that we can have that level of communication where we can support them. And the support is a lot in terms of encouragement, listening to them, and being there for them, so that they have that trust in us, and various other forms. But these are just some of the examples, because sometimes we do have parents who are not together, and it's difficult for them to do things. And that's what you said as well, Marwa, that we can use the community as well to support, and just by being there and listening to them is very important. And a lot of cases I noticed that children know what they want, right? And they can express it, and they do express it. Sometimes we just need to pay attention to it and just listen to them and pay attention to what they say, because then a lot of what they say is exactly what they need and what they want. And of course, we can't accommodate for everything, because not everything that they want is going to be possible for us to accommodate for. But paying attention to what they say is very important, because they do express themselves. Role modeling is very, very important, as you mentioned. And I remembered when you were saying it, the children, for example, when they are very young, when we're praying, what do? They come on the prayer mat and they want to pray with us or jump on us and so on. So these are kind of things as role models. When we do, the children just want to copy it, mashallah, from a very young age, and they grow up like that. So jazakallah khair for sharing these things. Okay. Yeah, we've got a few minutes, inshallah. Is there anything else you would like to add in terms of the support system, or something that can help parents?
I think it's really important to note, like when I mentioned community and the sense of belonging and being out there in the local areas, I think it's ever so vital that this is done in this digital era, because a lot of our children, even as adults, we are glued onto our screens, and the online communities are growing a lot more, and they're growing a lot more traction, and they aren't exactly in line with all our values. So unfortunately, there's things such as the polarization that's happening with the AI models and the personalization that occurs when people are just watching exactly what they want to watch and what grabs their attention, and the continuous scrolling and all these things. And I'm speaking, and I'm already on a platform that is online, but I just don't think there is enough good out there, and just the systems aren't designed to be child friendly as you would like them. So it's ever so important that there are those human connections and real life experiences that children are going through, volunteering and seeing others, getting a sense of community outside of the home and outside of the screens and outside of this online world that it's still fairly new, we could say. I mean, we've grown up with it, but it's still fairly new, and there's a lot of nuance that is required from a parent's side and to provide support, because there is still that kind of figuring out. Children are still figuring out things, and there's still advice on their self-development, self-care, all these things, and advise that we have to be careful as Muslims, what the children get sucked into and what we get sucked into as well. So there needs to be that real life human connections as well.
And the balance is very important, isn't it? Because there are advantages and disadvantages about most things. So when it comes to the digital world, there are huge benefits to it, but there are also disadvantages. So it's about balancing out, using it for what the benefit of it, and making sure that you have that balance of face-to-face and social interactions and so on, because that's very important as well. And something else that I thought was quite important to highlight is a support system for the parents themselves, because they can't just do it on their own. And sometimes a single parent, some of the dear listeners could be thinking, well, being a single parent is very difficult, and it is very difficult. So making sure that the parents have that self-care as well, taking care of themselves, having that me time, having time for themselves to do their hobbies, their interests, because that gives them a boost of energy, and that is a type of support as well that they can provide themselves. Networking as well, having the community support for the parents as well as the children. So that's not to neglect the parents in this area, because if we look after ourselves, then we're more able to look after others as well. And that goes to children. If we want to be the best parents, we need to make sure we take care of ourselves as well. So that's something I thought is quite important to highlight, because a lot of parents have that that, of course, unconditional love to the children. But I always have to highlight that it's important to look after yourself as well, because the more you look after yourself, the more you're able to look after loved ones as well.
Of course, you can't pour from an empty cup. That's what it boils down to. Yeah.
Exactly, absolutely. And Jazakallah khair for that. We've got actually just a minute before we go for the break, so I'm just going to quickly wrap up, and then inshallah we continue that great conversation after the break. So dear listeners, we have, just to remind you, we have Marwa El-Gaby with us on the show today, who's an educator, qualified and experienced maths teacher, Quran student and teacher, educational coach and youth leader as well. We've been talking just now before the break about the development of Studious Muslimah, who Marwa owns, and what has led to that, as well as her educational journey that contributed to the creation of Studious Muslimah. So, dear listeners, we are going to go for the short break. So, this is Inspire FM Luton on 105.1. Please do stay tuned to more content, inshallah, more discussions after the break.
Assalamu alaikum, this is Atif Nawaz. Listen to Inspire FM shows in your time by heading over to inspirefm.org or listen on Apple Podcasts or Spotify.
Assalamu alaikum everyone, welcome back. This is the Arise to Success show. Our guest today is Marwa El-Gaby, who is an educator, qualified and experienced maths teacher, Quran student and teacher, educational coach and youth leader. Her experiences range from working in secondary schools, universities, as well as in voluntary and charity sectors. She's the owner of Studious Muslimah, where she aims to enable Muslim female learners to have more fulfilling learning experiences, achieve their educational goals, and have all-rounded balanced lives. Studious Muslimah offers a range of educational services for secondary school age learners, college and university students, and beyond as well. This is a pre-recorded show, dear listeners, so we won't be able to take any calls today, but please feel free to send your comments or your thoughts on the show on 0779 481822, or you can also comment on Facebook. So, Marwa, Jazakallah khair again for being with us today. And before the break, we discussed your business, which is Studious Muslimah, the development of it, how it came to start, and what you do with the young people. Also talked about the support system that you have received and how that can benefit other parents as well, and other young people. So perhaps if we can talk a little bit more about Studious Muslimah, Marwa, and you mentioned that 3 words that is, kind of the foundation of Muslim Studious Muslimah, which is faith, confidence, and achievement. Could you tell us more about those 3 areas?
Of course, inshallah. So the idea is that the platform is for female Muslim learners, and we have to put faith first if we are to succeed and to achieve and to have those all-rounded balanced life. Is a faith-based approach that I take. And the idea is to educate in the realms of knowing our purpose as Muslims, and knowing that this life is a test, that it's for creating a better afterlife. And then the confidence really comes in with the point about females as teenagers, and that lack of confidence that we see. And it's kind of, there is an element of it being natural, and many girls have some sort of sense of lack of confidence, but I really want to help cultivate more confidence in young females, and to have things that help them, that sense of belonging, that sense of exploring their identity in safe space and in safe platform, And that is all to help with the experience of their learning. No matter what field they're in, so from secondary school, college, or university, the different settings that they're in, or the different aims, whether they're actually studying Islamic faith or they're studying other things in Western societies, etc., it's important that they develop their confidence in a faith-based manner. And then obviously that's ultimately going to lead to achievement and success in their education, inshallah.
Mashallah, that's great. Is it something that you can relate to from your own experience in terms of those three words, or is it just what you felt was important for the young Muslims?
Sure, it's definitely, certainly something that is from my own experience. As I mentioned, I was struggling with things in my teenage years and in my early adulthood, and I have to I've pointed out that faith is a massive thing that has helped me. It's not a coincidence that after the first kind of stress-related illness that I went through in my early when I first graduated from university, that kind of the actual recovery began when I started taking the memorization of the Quran more seriously. It's no coincidence that it coincided with that time. Alhamdulillah, I finished the memorization of the Quran at the end of my teen years, but then it was still something that I needed to work on. I needed to perfect my tajweed. I needed to re-memorize, and I'm still on that journey, alhamdulillah, because it's just never ending. So faith is definitely important, and it impacts your confidence levels, because you can't separate working on your faith and acts of worship and things like the memorization of the Quran without that character development within yourself, and the positive mindset, and the inner talk, and believing in Allah's divine decree, and that everything is perfectly planned, and He tests those whom He loves. So I couldn't separate all these things from my own journey. So faith and confidence really do come hand in hand, and they're so essential for people learning and educating on their journey in life.
That's a really interesting point that you made, faith going along with confidence, because you pointed out that it contributes to the inner self-talk as well, which is really interesting, subhanallah. And that that self-inner talk, if it's negative, it impacts in your confidence by lowering your confidence, and if it's positive, it raises your confidence. So subhanallah, I love how you connected it together, which really makes a lot of sense there. And you mentioned memorizing the Quran, mashallah. How long did it take you to memorize the Quran?
Oh, so it's interesting. I mean, you could say that I finished or completed at the age of 19.
Mashallah.
Alhamdulillah. But the Quran is so great and so noble that you have to constantly revisit and rememorize. You have to keep it up, and especially perfecting tajweed only really started when I started having one-to-one sessions with an online online. It is online now, but with a different Quran teacher than my parents. So someone outside that I needed to, really get my acts together and never disappoint. And because sometimes, unfortunately, when it's someone external, sometimes we spend more time and take things a lot more seriously, especially when there's a cost to things as well.
Yeah.
SubhanAllah. So that is something that I'd like to say my journey's not finished. I'm not like completed, although you could say the first time I finished at 19. So I think it's really important. It's something that has contributed to a lot of successes, alhamdulillah.
MashaAllah, and the journey in the Quran is continuous, isn't it? As you said, MashaAllah, it doesn't end there, and it's part of life. So that's amazing. And you also talked about that it contributed to your recovery. Could you tell us more about that? How do you feel that this contribution happened?
Yeah, subhanallah. So I had some troubling years from after graduating, and then again in the middle of my newly qualified teacher induction. And how people often repeat, when you're being tested, you have to come back to Allah. And some people find that quite a struggle, because some people are saying, no, I am close to Allah, I am close to my deen, but it's not about that. We're not saying your iman is low, and that's why you're ill. But, it's, he wants you more. Allah wants you back more. He is testing you because he loves you. And the severity of the test comes with how much he loves you. So if you realize that, and you realize the confidence, you realize your purpose, and that you need to get back on track, and there's something that you need to do differently. We're not saying, your iman is low because that's why you're ill, but there's that focusing your attention a bit more on what you can do more. There's always room for improvement. I mean, there's some people, mashallah, they pray and they do all these things, but there's something more that they are capable of doing more, and then they get tested, and that's what it is. That's what it is. So subhanallah, I feel that me taking the Quran more seriously is one of the things that I'm alhamdulillah capable of doing now. So it coincided. So 2018, if we want to give a date exactly, is when I started the one-to-ones with another teacher. And that's when really I felt, I don't know if people want to use this word, but I felt a bit of a glow up. It could be internal, but I did feel in myself a lot more confident from that time until now, compared to my teen years and early 20s, really.
That's amazing, subhanAllah. And that's why, as you said, you've built that Studious Muslimah based on faith, confidence, and achievement, mashallah. So that's amazing to have that. Such a great thing as memorizing the Quran and having that journey of the Quran, having that, the Quran and Allah's words as part of your life all the time. And that's why we have the prayer as well. We have, we read the Quran and the prayer so that it is part of our life. So Jazakallah khair for sharing this, and inshallah our dear listeners can benefit from that as well. So we talked about the faith, the confidence. What about the achievement?
So essentially the achievement, it's going to boil down to people's own capacity and their own levels, because it's great to achieve really high grades, and alhamdulillah, a lot of people that happens, but it's more about achieving their best. Achievement is not just, I don't want to just say it's getting to the top highest ranking universities, or even going to university. It's achieving your own best, and everybody knows and should respect their own abilities and their own limits and what they enjoy as well, because they no one wants to kill themselves over, and beat themselves over to get really, really high grades and not have enjoyed or actually learnt anything. It just be an exam preparation that's got them through the way. So I think that comes to the point about balance, and how I said about the goal of having all-rounded balanced lives. And I made one of the videos that I made on my Instagram was about how Studious Muslimah is not just about sitting and studying and being studious and just reading more. Even the word studious doesn't just mean reading more and studying more. It's about balance as well, and that balance is so vital. So in the video that I made, I said it's not just about studying. You have to look after your health, you have to look after your faith, your nutrition, your social life. All these things are important, and that is a sense of achievement. That is what I feel that success is. It's all rounded, it's balanced, it's healthy. I say that from having experienced times of imbalances. So I'm not saying I've been like that all along. I'm saying that is vital, and to aim towards that, and to find ways to reach sustainable levels of achievement.
That's great, and that's the best thing, is actually talk from experience, because you've been through it and you know how to help others, inshallah. We'll talk about the balance in a moment, but I'm just going to quickly remind the listeners, just in case anybody joined us later, is that we have Marwa El-Gaby with us on the show today, who's an educator, qualified and experienced maths teacher, Quran student and Quran teacher, education coach and youth leader. Her experiences range from working in secondary schools, universities, as well as in voluntary and charity sectors. She's the owner of Studious Muslimah, where she aims to enable Muslim female learners to have more fulfilling learning experiences, achieve their educational goals, and have all-rounded balanced lives. Studious Muslimah offers a range of educational services for secondary school aged learners, college and university students, and beyond. Today's show is recorded, so we won't be able to take any calls, but please feel free to text or WhatsApp your thoughts about the show on 0779481822, or you can also comment on Facebook. So, Marwa, we're just talking about the balance and how to maintain that balance. Could you give us a bit more tips for our dear listeners to benefit from, inshallah, based on your experience as well? We all go through phases where we lose that balance sometimes, where at some stages, for example, work becomes our center of attention, or family, and so on and so on. Are there specific tips that can help our dear listeners in terms of how they can maintain that balance?
Sure, there's a lot of things to unpick here if I'm going to give tips, because obviously that's why one-to-one is really important to have, and because people are different challenges, and people respond in different ways. But I will give some tips. I think you reminded me about the math teaching, because I'm a math teacher so I've worked in schools, and I still tutor maths, but I pride myself being a math teacher that doesn't over obsess over numbers and over rankings and over stats, all these things that are just very, very measurable. And okay, some of the services that I can provide is helping you write really good personal statement to get to where you want to go in university. I can help you with that. I can help with things like that. But the idea is that, what is your ultimate purpose, and what is your aim? What is your capacity? Because some people might choose a direct path but neglect lots of other things. And we were just speaking about balance. And for example, in my own choices, I mentioned how in one of my YouTube videos about the universities that I got into, but the ones that I actually accepted, because I got into a lot higher ranking universities at different stages of my life. But for me personally, at that certain stage, it wasn't the right choice to go to the most highly ranked university, and for various reasons. So I think it's important that people take advice, with a pinch of salt, and take the tailored approaches by educators and their parents and their support systems really carefully. And apply things. So if I'm giving tips to the listeners, if they are female Muslim students or anyone that's going to help them, I feel that I should really, because a lot of the things are based on, if you're saying the struggles that I've gone through, so I'll be addressing it to say maybe a teenager. So I think the biggest advice that I would give is patience and perseverance. I can't think of more of an umbrella term, and I'll unpick that. Patience and perseverance. You need to be patient and persevere with it, because there are going to be obstacles in the way. There's going to be a struggle to get into your, if people want to say, quote unquote, glow up period of time. There are going to be obstacles. There are going to be struggles. And like I mentioned about the tests, and Allah likes to test those whom He loves. So as long as you're true to yourself, true to your own faith and values, knowing that only you will be accountable for yourself at the end, there are going to be things that knock you off. You won't. We all. That's what makes us humans. We all make mistakes, and we all even sin. So we need to realize that and respect that. I'm not saying for people to not know. So you need to notice and be conscious. That God consciousness, that taqwa, is only going to be instilled the more and more you get knocked off your track and come back on the straight path, and being patient with that. And you will eventually get to the things that you'll achieve, the things that you want. You will get to where you want in this life, and inshallah in the hereafter, hopefully, by realizing that everything you do in this life is going to impact the akhirah. So having those connections and consciousness of it all, and it will improve your confidence, because you'll be patient in the decree of Allah and the destiny and everything that's happening, and that will build your confidence. It will keep this inner calm. And I like to talk about this inner dialogue. It's so important. A lot of girls are struggling, or even, you know, teenage males as well are struggling with self-doubt.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, patience and perseverance. I can't summarize it anymore.
Yeah, no, thank you for that. Great point. Jazakallah khair. The inner talk that you mentioned is certainly something that affects young people, adults as well, affects all different kinds of individuals. Are there any specific tips to help with that inner talk? I know you mentioned patience, perseverance. Is there anything else that can help with the inner talk? I myself would just like to add one point before I actually pass that on to you, is that sometimes the inner talk comes from childhood experiences as well, if we're teenagers or adults. So I would say paying attention to that is very important, as well as if you feel like it started from childhood traumas or some sort of, you know, experiences that you have gone through, my advice is to actually seek professional support, because sometimes we can't do it on our own. So some people feel that it's feel ashamed to kind of get the support because they should be relying on Allah. But I would say that it's the same as when we have physical pain, we go to the doctors. Mental health is something that, you know, Islam talks about quite a lot as well. So having to take care of your physical health as well as mental health is very important, whether that means going to see a therapist. That is your way of actually obeying Allah, because you are actually trying to help yourself, and Allah always, you know, wants us to take care of our health. So this is a piece of advice I would recommend. But throwing it back to you, Marwa, as well, are there specific any tips that you can give the individuals who are suffering from inner talk? It may not be so severe. For me, you know, when I was talking about therapy, that's if it's, you know, quite severe, or even if it's not so severe, you know, getting that therapy is very important as well. Marwa, are there any other tips that you would like to add?
So it's important to note that I'm not a psychologist or psychotherapist, and like you said, it's so vital that people seek help, and everybody has mental health that they need to take care of. I'm saying mental health, not mental illness. So
Yes.
you've got health, that it's called mental health, and you need to take care of it, just like you keep your health, physical health in check. And just like we get colds frequently, people get things that aren't exactly like a massive illness, but are related to their mental health, and they need to keep that in check. So with the inner dialogue, I think to recognize that it's not always true. It's not fact. It's not fact. And that sometimes it is whispers from the shaitan. And then you need to just say A'udhu Billah and reframe your mind. And sometimes it is, like you said, based on childhood trauma, based on difficulties in, difficulties growing up with whatever surrounding that they've had. So isolating yourself, knowing, being kind to yourself, having that positive talk, having that positive affirmations in your own head first, because that will come, it will come out. And they say, you know, with parenting and with speaking to children, you have to always be positive and reaffirm, and don't get the negativity out, because that is going to reflect. So the same with your own self, and same with the students themselves. Seeking help, like you're saying, is so vital, and talking therapies is important if it gets to severe levels, or it doesn't even need to get to severe levels for people to start seeking help. And there's a lot of great work that's being done, and I think that having myself gone through some mental health difficulties, I think inshallah in the future with Studious Muslimah I'll be a bit more vocal about that. I think this is probably the first time publicly that I've come out and said that throughout my education journey, even early career paths, I myself had to deal with my own circumstances to heal.
And Jazakallah for sharing this. I know that can be very difficult to share. So thank you very much for sharing this, so that inshallah others can benefit as well. And to kind of normalize that, you know what, we do actually go through that, and it's okay to talk about it and address it, because if we don't address it, we're blocking it away. And blocking it away means that we're not dealing with it. And that's something I notice that it happens a lot with working with adults and teenagers, is that sometimes when things get a bit too much, naturally, as you know, as human beings, what we do sometimes, one of our coping mechanisms, that we avoid it. And we avoid it, we learn to start blocking. And then what happens is that we start to dissociate with it's like we can't connect to our feelings, and that becomes a problem. So I'm not saying that avoidance in its own is something that is negative overall. It would have served a purpose in our lives at some point.
Yeah.
But once we start to feel, it starts to lead to negative impacts. And this is where we need to kind of like pay attention to it and then come back and see where it all started. And that's where therapy can help. So I can go on forever talking about that, but I'm just going to leave it to this part and just to highlight to the individuals, just the first thing, just to pay attention to it, be aware of it, and then seek support, inshallah, if you can't do it on your own. So Jazakallah khair for all of that. In the last few minutes before we end, Marwa, actually, you know what, let me just remind the listeners, just in case anybody who joined us later, we have Marwa El-Gaby with us on the show today, who's an educator, qualified and experienced maths teacher, Quran student and teacher, as well as an educational coach and youth leader. Her experiences range from working in secondary schools, universities, as well as in voluntary and charity sectors. She's the owner of Studious Muslimah, where she aims to enable Muslim female learners to have more fulfilling learning experiences, achieve their educational goals, and have all-rounded balanced lives. Studious Muslimah offers a range of educational services for secondary school age learners, college and university students, and beyond. And today's show is recorded, so we won't be able to take any calls, but please feel free to text or WhatsApp your thoughts on 07779 481822, or you can also comment on Facebook. So Marwa, coming back to yourself, if we can perhaps end with, what advice would you give young girls or parents as well, who are struggling in terms of any of the challenges that you've been through, or parents struggling to, having that support system for themselves or for their children?
So knowing your purpose in life, I think parents and the children need to realize that, and to always come back to that. Faith comes first, always. And I think I would put health second. Some people would, might put something else, but health is really important. And it's that all-roundedness, mental, physical health, and I haven't started speaking about exercise yet. I think that's probably for another show, inshallah. And to know your purpose, and the parents to do the role modeling, the support, the encouragement, the positivity, positive talk, and to gain your confidence and know that anything good comes from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Absolutely. So relating it all back to the faith. It starts from the faith and relating it back to the faith. So Jazakallah khair, Marwa. Thank you so much for being with us as well and sharing all the amazing experiences that inshallah is benefit to others who have been listening to us today. Jazakallah khair, dear listeners. It has been a great show. So thank you again, Marwa. And dear listeners, please do tune to future shows, which takes place every Monday, 6 to 7 p.m. Next week's guest is an audiologist and lecturer who specializes in therapy for dizziness, vertigo, and hearing problems. And she will also be sharing her story about the difficulties she experienced in achieving her goals and how she managed to overcome them. So do stay tuned. Jazakallah khair, and see you next week. Thank you again, Marwa. Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you for listening to our podcast. Why not tune in to our live stream at inspirefm.org and follow and subscribe to our social media platforms at InspireFM Luton.